To understand why Americans pay the highest drug prices in the world, we have to look back at a law that was written 40 years ago that became one of the biggest giveaways to the pharmaceutical industry in history. In 1984, then President Ronald Reagan signed into law the Hatch-Waxman Act, which has fueled today's monopolized prescription drug market. The Hatch-Waxman Act had two lead sponsors, Senator Orrin Hatch, a Republican from Utah, and Representative Henry Waxman, a Democrat from California. Hatch and Waxman set out to achieve several goals with their bill, but the main one was to get more generics into the market. If we only evaluate Hatch-Waxman on its effectiveness of introducing generics into the US, it looks like an overwhelming success. In 1984, only 19% of prescription drugs sold in the US were generics. By 1996, 12 years after the Hatch-Waxman Act was signed into law, that number rose to 43%. Today, 92% of all prescriptions in the US are generics. But to fully grasp the impact of Hatch-Waxman, we have to consider how it shaped the pharmaceutical industry over the last 40 years and the monster it created. 40 years ago, when the Hatch-Waxman Act was working its way through Congress, legislators had to fight against the industry and its lobbyists to keep the bill alive. The industry attacked Hatch-Waxman at every turn, claiming it would be the death knell of innovation, an emerging concept in economic and patent policy that would usher in a lower bar than invention in order to get a patent. To prevent the industry from killing the bill, legislators offered two concessions that would ultimately hand the pharmaceutical industry unprecedented power to prolong their monopolies. First, legislators rewrote patent law to give the industry a patent term extension, where a maximum of 5 years could be restored to the life of a patent to compensate patent holders for any marketing time lost while developing the product and getting regulatory approval. Legislators created a new type of intellectual property right where the FDA would grant and guarantee branded pharmaceutical companies uncontested market exclusivity on a newly approved drug. This new right was called an exclusivity period and would be unchallengeable by generic competitors. After Hatch-Waxman, branded pharmaceutical corporations realized they no longer needed to invent in order to thrive. All they needed was to find a single blockbuster drug, use Hatch-Waxman to monopolize it for as long as possible, and drive its price up as high as they could. This was the new economic policy of innovation that would allow for easier patenting in order to maximize profits with the least amount of investment. Branded pharmaceutical corporations completely reoriented their business models to take advantage of the Act's many concessions and loopholes. Remember when I said that generics make up 92% of prescriptions in the US? The other 8% is made up of branded drugs, which account for 84% of drug spending. Hatch-Waxman transformed the US prescription drug market into a playground for pharmaceutical monopolists. 40 years ago, Congress allowed the pharmaceutical industry to corrupt its attempt at creating a fairer, more competitive prescription drug market. Now it must regain control of the monster it created that is harming millions of Americans.